It's just gone 9:30. Can I welcome everyone to the Guildhall today for this in-person meeting, which is always nice to do these days. My name's Lucille Thompson and I'm Chair of the Cabinet and Leader of the Council. Please can I also advise that the open parts of the meeting are being audio recorded and live streamed from the Council's website, and in addition a video recording of the meeting will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel shortly afterwards. Please can I remind any officers joining virtually to turn off their cameras and mute their microphones until invited to speak. And can I please remind members to speak clearly and remember to use your microphone. Finally, please can I ask everyone to ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are on silent or switched off in timing. Thank you very much. And just a change in order of the agenda, because we have a number of people coming to speak on item, where is it? Item number 12. I propose to take that first, as you know, to allow those people to scurry off if they wish to. So that's just a change of order to the agenda. Right, so moving on to the procedural items. Apologies for absence.
There are none, Chair. Thank you.
Membership of Cabinet Committees. I don't believe there are any changes to those committees.
Not that I'm aware of.
Item number 3, declarations of interest. I've got one. I'm a trustee of Hampshire Cultural Trust, so therefore I'm declaring a pecuniary interest in the item that will be coming up, and particularly the recommendation on the budget. When I will leave the room and obviously not take part in any of the debate. That's mine. Councillor Todd.
Yes, I need to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest as a county councillor with some overlap with several of the areas under discussion.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there are any other declarations. Item number 4, to note any requests from councillors to make representations. I can only see one councillor, 2 councillors, sorry, lurking there. If it's acceptable to you, I will take you when we come to discuss those items, as we normally do. Is that, or do you wish to speak?
Councillor Brooke was sending a representation read out by Councillor Horn. Item 12, which I see you're taking first.
Yes.
So I'm going to try and extract that from there and read it myself if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
But otherwise, I'm here for the.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, sorry, without wanting to upset procedure and protocol, would it be possible just on this occasion for me to speak at the beginning as well? Because I need to get back to.
Yes. Yes. Would you like, therefore, to speak what now?
I think we're hearing another representation on the same.
Apologies. Sorry. Could you say that again?
I think I'm not sure that we're hearing from a resident on the same agenda item.
We are.
Maybe I could just say.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's what. Yeah. Thank you very much. Item number 5, minutes of the previous meeting. Cabinet, I assume you've all read them. Hope you've all read them. We all agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. And now we come to public participation. And I don't know whether you, members of the public, whether you'd like to speak now or whether you'd like to wait until your item comes up on the agenda. You're going to wait. Okay, thank you very much. That's fine. Okay, Leader and Cabinet members' announcements. I don't have any announcements to make, but I have several councillors who do. Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Leader. I have 3 things to quickly announce. First of all, following a very successful meeting between Winchester City Council, Hampshire County Council and National Express, and also with the support of Stagecoach. As of 1 PM today, National Express will be running a new set of trials on commercial options for restoring their services to Winchester. We'll be looking at the use of one of our partner rides, as well as a couple of more central routes in the city. And I'd like to thank all the partners involved. Very productive discussion as to how we can solve the problem of dealing with the new larger six-wheel coaches in our ancient medieval streets. Second thing I'd like to announce formally is that, again with the agreement of Stagecoach, we have introduced a free bus service between the Broadway and the Leisure Centre. So if residents turn up to Broadway, speak to the driver of the Park and Ride bus and say that they wish to ride from the Leisure Centre, they will be able to do so for free, and of course go back the other way. And I would stress, because I think there may be some confusion in reports in the Hampshire Chronicle, it is about a third less distance than it was to walk from North Walls to River Park. It's about 200 metres, 2.5 minute walk, as opposed to 300 metres to walk from the North Walls to River Park. And the third announcement is that yesterday the new permanent bollards that enable the closure of Great Minster Street and the square to through traffic were installed. This means we can start taking the plastic out. Signs are coming soon, but effectively it is the first step to having a much more attractive long-term installation of that particular closure of the road to cars, and enables the positive impact of that road closure on local businesses to continue in a more attractive way.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. Councillor Burnley.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to say that we will be welcoming a number of Afghan families to the district over the next month. The County and City Council are ensuring that they have what they need when they arrive, and we will be providing long-term resettlement support. Thanks to the generosity of local people, local charities have been inundated with physical donations, and Community First, who are coordinating collections, ask that if you want to help, donating supermarket and mobile phone top-up vouchers is ideal. The Community First website has details of how you can do that. Working with our partners, we are able to offer more homes to the resettlement scheme going forward, and look forward to welcoming more families in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burnley. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to say the RSPCA has awarded our animal welfare team their 10th gold medal in 5 years for their outstanding work with stray dogs and the licensing of animal establishments. The team has been recognised for their continued efforts in the front line of animal welfare, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, lockdowns and the significant rise in dog ownership over the past 2 years. Dave Griffiths and Ross Shepherd were both recognised for going above and beyond for the work protecting, rehoming and returning stray dogs to their owners, and ensuring establishments are providing excellent care for animals. Huge congratulations and thanks to them for the brilliant job they do. I'm also very pleased to tell you that the new major flood defence for Winchester at Durngate is now being completed. The multi-stage scheme now protects Winchester City Centre with an uninterrupted 950 metre flood defence system from Wales Street to Gordon Road. The off-site environmental work will also have a positive impact on biodiversity at Pleasanton Glen and the Nun Stream. It's also providing flood refuges for otters and gulls from Willow Road.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very pleased to announce that the Meadowside Leisure Centre at Whiteley reopened on Saturday, the 2nd of October. after a refurbishment undertaken on behalf of Winchester City Council by everyone active and managed by everyone active. The facility now includes an all-new 15-station gym floor, a new group cycling and virtual studio, as well as 2 5-a-side floodlit pitches and 3-court sports halls. And the Winchester Sport and Leisure Park are starting to open now for special events, and tomorrow there is a most prestigious disability sporting event at the centre, and Mayor will be there giving out certificates and medals. And we will also be joined by Lucy Shuker, the Team GB wheelchair tennis player who won silver in Tokyo in the 2020 Paralympic Games. And may I just give you a little bit of information about our funding programme? There is an event tomorrow on how to improve the success rate of funding applications. If you wish to join that, that's if you contact the team at the grants team. Crowdfunding, in order to support COVID recovery, we continue to provide a 4,000 match fund on our platform, and there is crowdfunding webinar training on Tuesday, the 9th of November at 1 p.m, and small grants are now open for applications. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Quite a few announcements there, so really nice to hear that all the things that are going on. That's brilliant. Right, so now move to the key decisions, and as I said, I'm going to take item number 12 as our first item on this part of the agenda. So I'd like to call on Councillor Gordon-Smith to introduce the item, please.
Good morning. I'm pleased to present this report to Cabinet to recommend we proceed with a non-immediate Article 4 direction in Chalk Ridge. The ward members and I met with many Chalk Ridge residents at the beginning of July and heard firsthand the ongoing issues residents have had with the number of concentrated HMOs in the street. At the moment, there are 5 of the 38 dwellings in the road have been converted to HMOs, and 1 more is being converted, and this amounts to about 16% of the houses in Chalk Ridge becoming HMOs. The local plan has a policy, Win 9, which recognises the importance of retaining a balanced housing stock across the city, acknowledging that HMOs, as well as family homes, have a role to play in achieving this. This particular Article 4 direction is unusual in that it's going to apply to 1 street only. Normally the policy relates to a neighbourhood within a defined geographic area rather than by street. It's felt though that Chalk Ridge, although it's part of Highcliffe, has a very distinct character, and HMOs, as the residents have said, appear to be a particular issue in the street. There are 2 aspects to Win 9. The first is to restrict the number of HMOs in a geographic area to no more than 20%, or if it's in a street, by street, of no more than 25%, as is the case here. The second part of the policy is to avoid an over-concentration of HMOs, which would result in a house being bounded by HMOs on both sides, or a continuous row of 3 or more. This has occurred in Chalk Ridge with number 34, 36 and 38 already operating as HMOs, number 32 currently being converted. And this is going to be a continuous row of 4 houses. At the moment, of course, HMOs that can accommodate 6 or more unrelated residents require planning consent. So this change is to looking about bringing control to those below that particular threshold. I'm recommending a non-immediate Article 4 direction can be served, which would take effect from 1 year from being made, after it's being made. Before direction can be made, the council must publicise the direction and take into account any representations it receives. There's also one further stage if this recommendation is accepted, and that is it has to be approved by the Secretary of State, as it's removing a permitted development right from house owners. This is generally a formality, but it is possible for the Secretary of State to call in a particular issue and to listen to the arguments before they make a decision, though it's unlikely to happen because it's relatively minor. The problem is that we're going to have a 1 year time lag, because otherwise the council lays itself open to claims for financial losses from people who've already bought houses with a view to converting them to HMOs. And that would obviously be something we would try to avoid. Right. I think that covers the points. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gordon-Smith. I have a number of people who wish to speak on this item, which was really one of the reason why I decided to push it up the agenda. A couple of members of the public. The first is Mr. Mike Robinson. Would you like to come to the desk there, please? And I believe you've got 3 minutes to make your presentation to us. Thank you.
Good morning, committee members. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the majority of the residents on Chalk Ridge. As Councillor Gordon-Smith said during our meeting in July, Chalk Ridge is pretty unique. It's in many ways, because of its geography, like a village. And as a result of that, we've developed quite a strong community. Around 5 years ago, Chalk Ridge comprised a mixture of housing with owner-occupiers, family renters and shared houses. But at this time, the shared houses provided only the original number of bedrooms that they were intended for. It's fair to say the residents felt safe, children played in the streets, and our community thrived. Now 5 years later on, the residents no longer feel as safe, children aren't playing in the streets anymore, and the sense of community is rapidly being eroded. And the reason for this change is the increase in the numbers of HMOs. And the newer HMOs that have come along have all been developed to house more than they did when they were family homes. Just as an example, the first of these new homes was a 3-bedroom family home, which became a 5-bedroom HMO. The next was a 4-bedroom home, which became a 7-bedroom HMO. And then a 3-bedroom home became a 6-bed HMO. And as Councillor Gordon-Smith has said, there's now a planning application in for number 32. There was a planning application in for number 32, which sought to increase it to initially a family home of 9 bedrooms. This was by a developer who only works with HMOs, so the next step would have been to go to an HMO, and looking at the plans it would have been easy to go from that 9 bedrooms to 12 as an HMO. So, you know, we had a campaign by the residents that actually allowed us to get them to back down, and now they're building an HMO within permitted development rights. So what's happened with these larger HMOs? We've had a big increase in antisocial behaviour and criminal behaviour. We've had drugs-related issues, we've had physical assaults on the road, and one of the other things that's causing me a lot of trouble is the amount of traffic that's increased, because each of these individuals living in the HMOs are really a separate household, and there's lots of extra parcel deliveries, takeaways, etc. So that's bringing much more traffic, quite often not very well adhering to the speed restrictions. And one other thing of note is that having an HMO through permitted development allows a fairly simple step to then get what's called sui generis, which is 7 bedrooms and above. So we're worried that having permitted development rights is encouraging speculators to pick up what are affordable houses in Chalkridge. We've tried engaging with developers to talk to them, and they're not really talking to us. So, you know, it's quite a problem for us. So, without the adoption of Article 4, we really fear that things will develop out of hand, and we'd really like to urge you to support Article 4 for Chalkridge to give us our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. I now call on Alison Broderick, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I'm Alison Broderick, I'm an associate at Savills, and I've been asked to make a short statement on behalf of the HMO landlords at Chalkridge. As you're aware from your Cabinet report, it's currently permitted development in this part of Winchester to change from a C3 residential house to a C4 class HMO of 3 to 6 people, meaning planning permission is not required to make this change. When the government introduced this permitted development right in 2010, it was, and to quote Housing Minister at the time, Grant Shapps, to ensure that councils don't have burdensome rules that assume housing issues in every town are exactly the same, but which also safeguard the supply of rental housing. As set out in the Cabinet report, and as echoed by Councillor Gordon-Smith, only 15.79% of houses on Chalkridge are or will be an HMO at present, significantly below the threshold of policy with life. Nonetheless, the option remains, as recommended in this case by your officers, for the local authority to introduce an Article 4 direction removing these permitted development rights. Whilst the landlords at Chalkridge do not agree that this is necessary, they understand the concerns have been raised by residents in regards to the balance of housing and welcome the discussion. Making an Article 4 direction does not prohibit the formation of any further HMOs in Chalkridge, but instead means that planning permission would be required, thereby bringing any proposals within planning controls. This would enable a discussion of any planning merits of each of the proposed houses, having regards to national and adopted local planning policy. It will also provide the opportunity for interested parties, including neighbours and tenants, to make a representation. We'd just like to clarify a point in the Cabinet report, which states that there will be no workforce implications, as it should be noted that any planning applications submitted once the Article 4 direction has been brought in would not pay an application fee, so there is a limited impact on your planning department there. The National Planning Policy Framework revised this summer states that when an Article 4 direction is considered, it should only be in situations where it's required to protect local amenity and over the smallest possible area. The number of existing and proposed HMOs is less than the threshold set out in the adopted local planning policy, and so it's unlikely that the character of Chalkridge has been changed. However, should members decide to follow your officer's recommendation, the landlords at Chalkridge would want to work with the local authority to support a non-immediate Article 4 direction in the spirit of the National Planning Policy Framework. The risk of further HMOs being established at Chalkridge before a non-immediate Article 4 comes in is very low. The most recent HMO has taken months of refurbishment, and this is typical of any conversion project. Given that Rightmove is currently showing no houses for sale on Chalkridge, it's very unlikely that further HMOs will be established within that time frame. As set out in your Cabinet report, making an immediate Article 4 direction would expose the Council to significant risks of paying compensation if planning applications were refused or permitted with conditions in the first 12 months of that Article 4 direction being made. Compensation claims are not limited to the planning process and can cover losses associated with the use of the land and any reduction in its value, in cases such as Slot versus Guildford Council and Carter versus Winston Maidenhead Council, rising to hundreds of thousands of pounds. You can avoid the risk of paying compensation by providing this 1 year notice with a non-immediate Article 4 direction in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you for your time, and we welcome the opportunity to answer any questions or liaise with the Service Lead and your officers as required.
Thank you very much. I've now got 2 councillors who'd like to speak on this item, and first up is Councillor Charles Radcliffe.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning. As Ward Councillor for St Michael, I'd like to express my own strong support for the introduction of Article 4 restrictions in Chalkridge. And I'd also like to thank the Cabinet member for the built environment and those council officers who have worked over the last few months with local residents to bring forward this proposal. Having spoken with many residents of the street over the past 6 to 12 months, I can confirm there's strong support for an Article 4 direction. In fact, I'd say there's some frustration that it cannot take immediate effect. Chalkbridge really has, for a long time, been a quite special community in Winchester, not just because of its setting, which perched as it is on a high ridge cut off from surrounding areas. It's always been a very close-knit community, family-focused. It's been the kind of place where the neighbours all know one another, where the kids play in the street until dark. For many years, in fact, Chalkbridge has been providing something that's in desperately short supply in our city, which is affordable family homes, a place where people on modest incomes could buy a house, bring up a family, or retire somewhere safe, friendly, and with very strong community bonds. The arrival of HMOs in Chalkbridge unfortunately threatens to change all this. In fact, to some extent, it already has. In recent years, as we've heard, 5 of 38 homes at the street have been converted into HMOs, soon to be 6, with the potential for more to follow. That's 6 homes that were previously housed 6 individuals, couples and families, now housing, I understand, 34 or more tenants on short-term tenancies. And at a meeting in the summer, we heard from many long-term residents about the impact it's having. People coming and going at all hours, deliveries night and day, an extra 30 or more cars on the street, more traffic, no parking. Children no longer play in Chalkbridge as they once did. Women have reported feeling less safe walking in the street after dark, and there are problems with litter, bins, noise, and antisocial behaviour, all of which residents link to the new HMOs. And none of this should be read as an argument against HMOs. We know that in a city like ours, with a mobile, growing population, young people and students, there is growing demand for affordable studio flats. But we must have proper regulation. We need a degree of community control over the number, size, distribution and location of these new HMOs, especially in places like Chalkbridge, where they have been proliferating and generating acute community concerns. Introducing Article 4 restrictions in Chalkbridge won't fix everything. It won't necessarily stop HMOs being established, and it certainly won't force the reconversion of existing HMOs back into family homes. And residents understand this. But what it will do is it will give local people a say over future proposals. And by setting a cap on numbers, it will offer them some reassurance that the street won't become overly saturated with HMOs. In short, it's a reasonable and proportionate response to the concerns expressed by residents. I hope very much that we're giving approval today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lumby, you've got a statement to read out, I gather, on behalf of Councillor Horrell.
Yes. So firstly, I'm reading this for Councillor Brooke. So can you imagine her voice rather than mine? These are her opinions, but they're good opinions. Councillor Horrell has also asked me to say that she was due to be here. She's been delayed by a medical appointment running late. No details, but she also offers her apologies for now as well. So I think, oh, I'm off, right. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak today. It is essential that across our district that the balance of housing is correct to support our communities and the enjoyment that our residents have of the place they live. I completely understand the request from residents and councillors to implement this Article 4 in Chalkbridge, as having over 15% housing at HMOs does really impact on that community in many different ways. I would ask, what is the volume of HMOs in the surrounding areas that will no doubt be impacted by the implementation of this Article 4? The issue will be moved to surrounding areas, and this is exactly the type of unintended consequences that Article 4s can create. The Article 4, of course, does not prevent any additional HMOs in Chalkbridge, just means they have to seek permission, so making it hard. The local plan is the place to take a holistic approach to HMO planning and restrictions to ensure that the challenges don't just get shifted from one area to the next. The local plan was originally planned to be completed in 2022, and the delay causes exactly this type of issue, forcing a piecemeal approach to planning. Preventing HMOs in one area without a clear direction and plan as to where may be appropriate leaves other communities at risk of the same challenge that has occurred in Chalkbridge. I would urge the portfolio holder to consider this more carefully, to consider all of the residents in Chalkbridge and the surrounding areas before implementing any more Article 4s, so that this issue does not just keep being moved to other locations. Thank you for your time this morning.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your contributions. Cabinet, have you any points to make or questions on the paper first of all? I think we've all seen, certainly those representing the city, in the city wards, we've all seen an increase in HMOs within our wards. And from my point of view, I am really pleased to see this, that we are tackling individual roads, because I think that is the way to go. I've got a number of roads in my ward where I'm pretty sure they are pretty much up to 15%. And I take what Alison said about, well, you've only got 15% and it's not quite up to the 25% that you need before this can kick in. But actually we've seen in other areas of the city, and Stanmore is one of them, where Article 4 has been introduced sort of after the horse has bolted, and we want to make sure that actually we're ahead of the game on this. Councillor Leonard, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think the residents' presentation raised one of the things that is becoming an increasing issue around HMOs. I mean, many of us have been through times in our life where we've lived in HMOs, but it's very different having 3 people living in a 3-bedroomed house and that house having 3 extra bedrooms attached to it in areas which just aren't designed to take that number of people and that amount of traffic. So I think increasing controls are appropriate where this is clearly a problem. As the leader has said, we're all seeing it happen in our areas throughout the city. And while at the moment, certainly in my area, I wouldn't say it's a problem, it is raising increasing concerns. So it is something that we do need to look at through the local plan, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take action now where there is a clear and present problem. One of the things I would say is it does show that we do have a need for smaller affordable housing. You know, the kind of flats that we're building at Winnall will help provide the kind of accommodation that can take some of that pressure off the need for HMOs in the rest of the city. And I think we need to think about doing more of that going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy, and then Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Linda. I'd like to thank Councillor Gordon-Smith for bringing this paper before Cabinet today. As one of the ward councillors for the area, I'm most definitely supporting it. I've been hearing residents get more and more unhappy over the last few years as the number of HMOs in Chalkbridge has increased. Families are starting to move out as they feel the nature of the street is changing. And as you heard from Mr. Robinson, you know, families don't feel safe, children are no longer playing in the street, and there's a huge increase in the amount of traffic. An Article 4 direction will provide the mechanism for residents and ward members to comment and proposals for any future HMOs. We are aware, however, that this does not mean that there won't be any more. But we do have to look, as Councillor Lurley said, into how we get more affordable housing in Winchester, because it is an expensive city. In Chalkbridge, we need to keep a good balance. I think this is our best mechanism to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd echo everything that everybody's been saying about HMOs, certainly in my ward, so as a county council in my division, that has caused issues. And I strongly endorse what was said by Councillor Lurley about the need for small affordable flats. The other thing where we need the other area where the local planning is currently more or less silent and needs to take a more assertive approach is in the question of properly forecasting and planning for the level of halls of residence that we need in Winchester. We've had some situations where they've been put into places that residents felt weren't particularly appropriate, but we very definitely need them. And indeed, what we saw with some expansion in the numbers of halls of residence was the decommissioning of some HMOs as the student market moved into the halls. So as when we're looking at the plan, we need to take a holistic approach to this, the small affordable flats, the halls of residence, and controls through Article 4 and the like, to make sure that we're able to have balanced communities that work for everybody, whether they're students, whether they're people starting out who for whom an HMO is appropriate, and or whether they're people who want a family house and have been having difficulty finding access to one.
Just before I call Councillor Clear, we seem to have moved into debate rather than questions, and I just wondered, just before I take Councillor Clear, whether there are any questions that need to be answered. No? Okay. Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Leader. No, not a question, just a couple of comments. I'm very pleased this has come forward. Thank you, Councillor Gordon-Smith, and all the officers involved for their hard work. After listening to Mr. Robinson's comments, I think the residents of Chalkbridge have had their fair share of HMOs. So I fully support this, and I hope it will help the residents to get back their community, sir. So thank you for coming along, and yes, I fully support it.
Okay, Councillor Gordon-Smith, do you want to sum up at all, or shall we move straight to the recommendations?
Yes, I think we do need to pass this measure. I think, though, that people have to recognise that the character of streets and parts of cities changes due to economic changes and all sorts of different social patterns. And in planning terms, we're not in a static state. People may look back and wish it were, but it's a question of controlling the change in a direction we think is appropriate. But I've also made a note of the points about student accommodation and developing policies for those for incorporation into the local plan. So, thank you.
Okay, so Cabinet, we'll move to the recommendations then. They are on page 274 of the agenda pack. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for your participation in the meeting. Okay, moving swiftly on, we now go back to item number 8 on the agenda, which is the Winchester District Green Economic Strategy, CAB 3319. And I'd like to invite Councillor Todd to introduce the paper, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to say that after intensive work with businesses and other partners across the district, that we're able to bring the 10-year Green Economic Development Strategy to you today. And by green economic development, we mean continuing economic growth while reducing net carbon emissions. That's something that came back very strongly from our stakeholders. We need to move away from a green versus growth debate. And the plan that we have in front of us today enables us, or is intended to enable us to do both. The strategy that we're being asked to sign off provides a set of scenarios, themes and outcomes which is designed to provide a framework which we can use to work with local businesses and other stakeholders to create a shared action plan. It's very much the start of an ongoing process of collaboration with businesses and other stakeholders so that we have a robust plan for the way forward that helps achieve the wider set of goals that are laid out in this paper. It's because it would be foolish to design a rigid and inflexible approach to the future if we look for the next 10 years. Certainly, if you look at the changes we've faced in the last 10 years, anybody who tried to write a clear route back for the road ahead at that point would have been foolish, I think. So it does provide a flexible framework that will that makes choices, that enables us to work on the right things despite the uncertainty of the time ahead. It's effectively a launch pad for working with business and other partners in an ongoing programme that will enable our district to thrive, to move ahead as the thriving carbon neutral district where people live, work, study and visit. And therefore I would ask that you support it today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. I now have one councillor who wishes to speak on this, and it's Councillor Lumley.
Chair. Before we start, I do refer to Hampshire County Council. I don't know whether I have to make a declaration of interest as a Hampshire County Councillor, but if we do, then can I be treated as having made it? I'm not quite sure about that. Apologies. I'm afraid this is also there's rather a lot here, so this is rather a breathless character, so brace yourselves. Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the opportunity to address Cabinet today. This is an important strategy. I would like to thank you for the opportunity given to me to be involved in the interview process with the consultants appointed to prepare this, and then to see the evolution of their thinking as they developed it. And let me be clear from the outset, I do see much that is good in here, and which I believe we should be getting on with. We are all agreed that we want to see jobs and investment coming into Winchester, and if we can do that in a way that supports businesses right across the district and leads to lower carbon growth, this must be a good thing. But I do have some reservations and thoughts, and these ultimately go to what happens next. First, when the proposal to appoint green economic development consultants was brought to Cabinet, it set an ambition to create a policy with buy-in from all groups and from all areas right across the district. Yes, there has been some consultation, but not that deep. The document we have is, I'm afraid, rather dense, and frankly, in relation to the scenarios, pretty incomprehensible. I contrast this with a New Forest National Park Authority's plan, which is accessible, direct and catchy. For example, their emphasis on the green and the blue and the creation of a natural health service. Our references, by contrast, to a level up district, to putting communities into a resilient district, will at best, I think, mean very little to many people, maybe a bit better, blah, blah, blah. We need to refine this down massively and be going out with something that is easy to comprehend and is capable of engaging with people and getting their buy-in. Secondly, I'm concerned that, for what I assume are basic political reasons, some of the original ideas from the consultants have been adapted, watered down or omitted. The need to bring forward developments like station approach was originally included and then disappeared. This is a shame, as this is vital to provide the prime office space we need in the city, to pivot from the public sector to the private, and to provide the opportunity we need to keep young people in our district. References to entrepreneur and enterprise were driven out, being replaced by the rather more meaningless scenario of a vibrant place for business. New and growing enterprises are actually the thing we should be doing the most to promote locally, not trying to hide them away in an embarrassed fashion. Perhaps even more so, perhaps because the need to emphasise the green side of this, lots of decarbonisation pieces were added. There's nothing objectionable about this per se, but these are not part of an economic development strategy. By way of example, affordable low carbon housing is great, but it belongs in the climate change plan. This may potentially confuse investors rather than draw them to the area. My plea is that we move quickly to develop implementation plans that bring back these practical ideas and we take positive steps to support business, rather than agonising over language or upsetting vested interests. This brings me to my third point. It's clear from the strategy how few levers we have. In addition, our reputation for poor collaboration has been made clear by the consultants. It's therefore really important that we are as targeted and focused as possible in what we do to implement. This means we have to have the resources within the business team to act. I'm looking forward to Professor Mariana Mazzucato's recent book on the US moonshot program under President Kennedy. The key to success with the public sector having the resources and the corporate brain to ask the right questions and act on the answers. We have far too long whittled down our corporate brain, and we've seen the issues with the planning team, what happens when this goes too far. So my plea is to make sure that sufficient resources of the right quality are dedicated to this. Next, the evidence base in the report makes it clear what a great economy we actually have already. We need to be ultra careful to protect and nurture this. Experience from elsewhere across the county makes it clear that delivering growth and change will need a combination of carrot and stick. Our best stick is probably the local plan, and as this is currently under revision, we have a great opportunity to incorporate suitable mechanisms in there. So we need to identify urgent these mechanisms are and consult on them. If this means a little pause on the process, so be it. Indeed, with so much else going on there, a longer period of consultation may be sensible anyway. Finally, much of the strategy lies outside our control. We need to work closely with partners and therefore should not be antagonising them. Actually, delivering actual green growth here will be best achieved as part of a wider regional strategy, which of course is one of the objectives of the proposed county deal. I would ask therefore that we engage in that process in as constructive a manner as possible. So, lots to do, let's get on with it, and many thanks. 5 seconds to go.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lundy. Councillor Tobbs. Touched it already.
Oh yeah.
No, thank Councillor Lumby very much indeed for his comments, and I hope I can reassure him on some of the points. I mean, he rightly highlights that we need to collaborate in order to achieve these outcomes. We have been in touch with the county about their work on a green recovery strategy with the New Economics Foundation, and he talks about how we work with them on the county deal. I can reassure him that we actually submitted the draft Green Economic Development Strategy to Hampshire as our wish list for the county deal. So we have actually found that this piece of work proved exceptionally useful in defining the scope of the kinds of collaboration and the kinds of ways that we can work with other authorities across the county, or even, dare I say it, transfer some responsibilities from central government to the county level in order to achieve the kind of items that are laid out. And I'm pleased that effectively he's calling for what we're intending to do in terms of the next stage of the process, which is, of course, produce shall we say, a slightly simpler and high-level view of the building blocks of the strategy that we will use to engage more widely. And then absolutely the intention is that we work on a collaborative basis at pace with our partners to get a practical implementation plans and priorities in place. And in terms of resource, the word priorities is a very important one. We need to be realistic about the financial state that the council is in. And what this strategy is intended to do is to give us the framework that means we do focus our efforts on the highest impact activities where we can make the biggest difference, and also target our efforts to ensuring that other partners are doing what we believe and what hopefully we can work out together are the highest impact activities. In terms of his rude comments about levelling up, I suggest he raise that with his party in government if he thinks it's not a particularly clear theme. Certainly it was something that came from the engagement and consultation that we were having with people, and that I think we've taken and interpreted in a way that will be relevant to the district. There's one area where I would disagree with him. Construction and our housing is an important business area in the district. So treating it as if it's something that happens separate from the world of business, given the importance of architecture, design, refurbishment, everything that goes with ensuring that housing across the district is low carbon, treating it as something that doesn't happen primarily through the private sector would be quite a strange decision, I think. We have, I think, around 5,000 of the 45,000 residences in the district. And so a strategy that was attempting to get affordable low carbon housing and affordable in excess of energy bills, as well as the cost of rental or purchase, only through our own estate would be a strategy that was not going to succeed. And indeed, that's one of the priority areas in terms of ensuring that we address the skills shortages in this area and also the knowledge shortages in this area, particularly when it comes to an area with a lot of ancient buildings that we need to find ways of making net or zero carbon. And I would also disagree with his characterisation of our approach to the need for office space in the district. It is very clearly reflecting on the new work patterns, the new office models is something that I think is clearly built in there, and it's something I know that the business team and the wider team are thinking very deeply about in terms of ensuring that Winchester and the district are ready and able to take a leading role in the new work patterns that are emerging post-COVID. One of the interesting factors that came up in discussions of decarbonising transport in the district is that, and something that's emerging in the local plan LTP4, the Hampshire County Council, is that the internet is going to be a very powerful tool for decarbonising transport, because effectively it means that some of the long commutes that people make that contribute to large parts of our carbon footprint as a district, they have to disappear, some of them, in order to achieve our carbon goals. That in turn has implications for how office space will be used and how places will be used. And again, that is something that's very much, I think, within the scope of what we have in the plan. Part of it, for example, comes to this whole question of 20-minute communities, where we talk about not just how that works in terms of shopping and how people live, but also how people work. And that the days of the long commute, they will never disappear completely, but they are something that within the scope of what we're looking at and have implications for the kind of office space that we will need. And certainly I think the team see that as something absolutely that's within the scope of the economic development strategy. So overall, I'd thank Councillor Lumbey, because he has constructively engaged in the process throughout, and that is appreciated. I think his challenges in terms of making sure we have a version that is, shall we say, on one page, slightly easier to pick up and engage with, and that the action planning is collaborative and happens right across the district, are challenges that we have already identified and we intend to be taking on. I can reassure him that we will, of course, be working collaboratively, not just with the County Council, but with all other relevant partners in the district in order to bring this to life.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd, for responding in such a full manner to Councillor Lumbey. Cabinet, have you any questions on this paper? Because we have Mr. Robbins in the room if we need to ask any detailed questions. No? Any further debate? Councillor Cutler.
Well, there you go. I was just going to say, I think we've had such a full debate between Councillor Lumbey and Todd. It's been covered.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Just to say, I'm very happy to see this paper come forward with about 8,000 businesses, behind over 80,000 people across the district. They all contribute to our energy and transport carbon emissions, and this strategy will be key to helping them deliver the change to a low carbon economy, and that's essential to being a carbon neutral district by 2030. The strategy is closely aligned with our carbon neutrality action plan, and it does demonstrate just one of the ways in which our council leadership is tackling carbon from regulation.
Thank you very much. If there's no further debate, I'd like to move to the recommendations, please, on page 12 of the agenda pack. Cabinet, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We now move to item number 9, and that is the Air Quality Supplementary Planning Document, CAB 3311. And I'd like to call on Councillor Murphy to introduce the paper, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to be bringing forward this paper today. Developing an air quality SPD is one of the core actions in our existing air quality action plan. It is designed to improve air quality and therefore public health in the air quality management area of the city. By seeking to mitigate air quality impacts, many of the departments also support the wider objectives of reducing carbon emissions, which will support us in our objectives of becoming a carbon neutral district by 2030. We brought the draft SPD to Cabinet on 20th of January this year, and then carried out a 2-month public consultation between February and April. We've given considerable thought to this air quality SPD to ensure that it works well with the existing planning process and does not present an undue burden to planning officers, developers or agents. I think Mr. Ingram is online joining us virtually, so I think he'd like to give a few more details.
Mr. Ingram.
Can you hear me, members?
We can indeed, and we can see you too.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, just to add to Councillor Murphy's introduction, this air quality SPD has been in the making for a little while. It's been about 18 months thus far, and we've spent a lot of time and effort ensuring that it is a working document that sits well within the planning process, and as Councillor Murphy alluded to, does not create undue burdens, and that was a key component in our considerations. We went out for a 2-month consultation in February to April, and we received 21 consultation responses, which I acknowledge is not a significant number of consultation responses. It was conducted in parallel time with the local plan consultation, but the consultation responses we received were very helpful and have been used to shape the air quality SPD that you see before you today. In broad context, the responses that we received were challenging our position to continue with an outright ban on the installation of solid fuel appliances within new development, and we gave that position quite a lot of thought, and we continued with our proposal to continue to ban solid fuel appliances, because we remain committed with our primary position of protecting public health. Even though there are more lean burn stoves on the marketplace, they still produce considerable levels of particulates, and it was felt quite strongly at the steering group that we should still adopt a zero tolerance to solid fuel in new development, simply because in most cases it's an additional luxury as opposed to the primary heat source within the property. So that remained unchanged from the SPD as presented in January. We also considered whether or not we could prevent the retrofitting of stoves and fireplaces after occupancy, so put a condition on development to prevent post-occupancy fitting of stoves, and we sought legal advice on that particular issue, and the advice that we received came back as essentially saying that was not within the 6 tests for conditions as outlined within government guidance, which need to be relevant to development for it to be permitted and reasonable in all other aspects. And it was felt that it didn't meet those criteria. So for development that would otherwise not require planning permission, i.e. the retrofitting of a solid fuel stove, it was felt that we couldn't put that within one of our principles. So that has been removed. The other point of discussion was whether or not the requirement for low NOx boilers could be controlled through appropriate planning conditions, and we felt that it was no need to amend the SPD in that regard. because it was felt that yes, it could be appropriately conditioned through planning conditions. So that's been retained within the SPD. Perhaps the biggest amendment as a result of the consultation was a very valid point that came back, which was that for smaller developments, i.e. developments up to 10 domestic properties or properties that were less than 500 square metre, less than a certain square meterage, they are required to undertake an air quality statement, and that means that there's a list of 5 expectations that they would have to deliver, which is electric vehicle charging points for development that has off-street parking. Low emission boiler systems can only be fitted, i.e. boiler systems that emit less than 40 micrograms per metre cube NOx. That cycle storage must be provided as part of the development, and that public travel plans be provided to the purchaser of the property. So many of those aspects are fairly low cost measures to a developer. So for those smaller developments, that the developer is only required to set out how they would meet or achieve those requirements. However, it was identified through the consultation that for the larger developments, i.e. 10 or more properties, it could be feasibly argued by those developers that they actually are having very minimal impact on air quality, and therefore could put forward an argument or position that they need to do nothing. And this we felt was very counterintuitive to the direction of intent of this supplementary planning document. So we changed it to ensure that all smaller development must undertake an air quality statement, present an air quality statement as part of their planning application, and that for larger developers of 10 or more properties, they would have to also present an air quality statement, but in addition undertake an air quality assessment in accordance with the Institute of Air Quality guidance. So essentially we've created a base requirement for all development within the SPD area. And finally, there was quite a lot of debate about the SPD area itself, which currently is the Winchester's urban development area plus a 1 kilometre buffer. And as Councillor Murphy mentioned in her introduction, this SPD has been identified as part of the Air Quality Action Plan, and the Air Quality Action Plan is effectively married to the Air Quality Management Area, which is essentially the town centre of Winchester. So there was a lot of conversation about whether we should make this SPD district-wide, and it was felt that we couldn't do that because in the wider district broadly, well, entirely, air quality meets national standards. So we retained the original proposal, which was that the Winchester's urban development area plus 1 kilometre buffer would be the SPD area, inside of which it would capture all development. So I don't know if there are any questions from the members in response to that presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ingram. Members of the Cabinet, have you any questions? No, I don't think so. So thank you very much, Mr. Ingram, for that contribution. There appear to be no questions. So any debate? Councillor Lerner.
Thank you, Leader. I think this is a very timely document for us to be producing as we're in development of the local plan. I think we really do need to recognise the problems of air pollution, particularly within the city. Obviously, people like their wood burners, but even an eco-design wood burning stove is allowed to produce 750 times more PM 2.5 particulates than an HGV is, and we just can't. We have to get people to recognise the problems around these kind of wood burners, and we also need to recognise that these are generally owned by the more affluent members of our population. It's not a case that people are using it generally as a cheap source of heating, certainly not in the city centre. In fact, in a modern house, if you light your wood burning stove, you will almost certainly have to open all your doors and windows to make up for the heat that's generated. So I understand the controversy about that, but I do think that we're dealing with that appropriately. The changes that have been made in response to the consultation are also sensible ones, and the area covered matches where we recognise that there is the biggest problem. So I'm very happy to support this paper.
Thank you very much, Councillor Loney. Any further debate? Any comments, Councillor Murphy? Anything else to say in summing up? No? Okay. In that case, we move to the recommendations on page 181, which is that we adopt the revised air quality SPD as set out in Appendix A. Are all in agreement? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ingram.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. We now move on to item number 10, which is the budget options and medium-term financial strategy, CAB 3318, on page 235, or beginning on page 235 of the agenda pack. As I stated at the beginning, we will be debating obviously the paper, but I will leave the room when we come to the recommendation number 5, as I'm a trustee of Hampshire Cultural Trust, and we'll save the debate on that particular recommendation until I'm out of the room, please. So thank you very much. Councillor Cutler, would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. In our 2020 budget, we sought to address the huge projected deficits bequeathed us by the previous administration. At the same time, recognising there were vast challenges ahead with cuts in government funding and the volatility likely to be caused by Brexit. So at the time, we created a transition reserve to better deal with the peaks and troughs ahead of us. At the time, we were accused of hoarding rather than sensibly saving for a rainy day. As it was, the rainy day wasn't a sort of typical Atlantic storm. It was more akin to a lengthy tropical cyclone, I think. And with the emergency budget in 2020 to address the £5 million shortfall due to the catastrophic drop in income caused by COVID, and the 2021 budget needing to address the fairly accurately predicted shortfall of £3.1 million for this current year, we've had to take some very hard decisions. But as we come to the beginning of this budget, we do find ourselves on relatively firm ground, compared with many other councils, due to the caution that we've had in the past. So this report sets out the current position in this financial year, with recommendations for additional funding to support core services and additional resources for project delivery. We also recommend a contribution of £75,000 from the grants reserve to Hampshire Cultural Trust to support the development of an Anglo-Saxon experience attraction in the city. This attraction will increase and possibly shift the demographic of our visitor numbers and support high street recovery. As part of setting a balanced budget for 22-23, we set out the baseline assumptions from which we will prepare a detailed budget for council approval in February. We make firm recommendations for a discount of £10 on garden waste subscriptions for those in receipt of council tax reduction, and no increase in garden waste charges or parking charges outside of the air quality management area in the city. The report sets out the medium-term financial strategy at Appendix A, which shows a balanced budget for 22-23, a projected deficit of £1 million, around £1 million for 23-24, rising to £2 million in 24-25 and 3.5 in 25-26. We believe that it's sensible to use the transition reserve to cover the deficit in 23-24 to give the stability necessary to concentrate on what will be a long recovery from the traumas of COVID, and sufficient time to undertake an in-depth strategic review to achieve at least £2 million savings in the longer term. This paper makes provision for the outcome of the government spending review based on the assumptions we've made in previous years, which we hope is the worst case scenario. Hopefully the government will finally produce a 3-year deal in the budget at the end of this month. Clearly, if the settlement is better than predicted, we may have increased room for manoeuvre, but of course it might be worse. The recommendations are set out in the agenda are somewhat incomplete, and I propose that 4 amendments be made, which I've circulated. The amendments to recommendation 5, around the £75,000 contribution to the trust. 8 was not particularly clear, and I actually need to amend the amendment that I've circulated because it's to approve a £10 discount to garden waste subscriptions, removing the word existing for residents in receipt of council tax reduction. And at 9A, that there will be no increases to off-street parking charges outside of Rochester's central air quality management parking zone. Detailed proposals for the central AQM zone will be brought forward at a later date. And finally, an amendment to 9C, which changes reference to recommendation 6 to reference to recommendation 7. With these amendments, I hope government will, cabinet will support the recommendations made in this report. I have my doubts if the government
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. Councillor Godfrey, you've got your name down to speak on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I may just address government in this way. I'll be most grateful. I admire the relative brevity of this paper, and the amended recommendations. I understand the intent and even welcome some of those recommendations. Although I do think the £10 level of the discount for garden waste for those who receive council tax reduction does seem a very small amount, given the challenges facing those who are on the lowest incomes in our community. I would welcome a review of that amount at the earliest possible time. I acknowledge that there are many areas of uncertainty that impact on the budget for next year and for subsequent years. The replacement of the government's New Homes Bonus scheme may have a significant impact on Winchester, as might decisions about the retention of locally elected business rates and on the county deal. But I cannot, in all honesty, say anything good about the medium-term financial strategy in this paper. And frankly, neither can anyone else, because there is nothing there. Nothing is changed, nothing is forecast, nothing is planned. This paper is tinkering at the edges of a budget, holding out until government makes another handout or someone comes up with a good idea on how to make the budget spread further. While decision postponement is an excellent principle of engineering, it is rarely wise in public administration. Long term, the City Council is burning £4 million a year more than it's bringing in. And the only solution that the administration is putting forward is to raise taxes, raise charges, and charge for services that were previously free. That is not income generation. That is like a football club going back to the owner to ask for another bailout. Unless there is already some plan afoot to radically cut the services offered by the council or to sell for silver, how can the financial stability of the council be solved by doing nothing for another year, as is proposed in this paper? And frankly, what's been going on with planning for the last 12 months? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Cutler, have you any response to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to respond to that. I think I made it very clear that we did plan ahead in recognising that things would be rocky over the last few years, not as rocky as it turned out to be even more rocky than we expected. And that's why we created the transition. And I have a very strong view that it is important to maintain stability and without dramatic change, so to allow for recovery, for the development of new ways of working within the council, and to give us time to have a really comprehensive look at reviewing our spending and a strategic review to create £2 million worth of savings, which can either be from income generation or from more efficiencies. Now, Councillor Godfrey talks about a sort of core 4 million in the medium-term financial strategy. I have a copy of the 2019 medium-term financial strategy, which had a core 7.5 million deficit and no plan. So I think it's a bit rich to have that sort of comment here. So I'm content that we have a good plan going forward. It may be something rather too boring for your approach to things, but I think it's very important to have some stability over the next couple of years for the council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. Any questions, Cabinet? I mean, obviously, this is the first step in the budget process, and at the moment, these are all options, and it has some way to go between now and formally adopting the budget in February. If there are no further questions, any debates? No? Oh, Councillor Todd.
No, I don't think we know. I'd just like to say I welcome this paper. I'm pleased that we've been in a position to, well, first of all, I'm grateful to garden waste. I mean, I think it is something to be to celebrate. It's something to be. I'm pleased that colleagues are of the view that we'll be able to freeze the garden waste subscription and also introduce the discount system. As you know, we didn't want to start charging necessarily, but when the county withdrew the recycling credits, which hit the recycling budget, effectively the £500,000 charge, then effectively it became unavoidable. But I am in that context pleased that that it has been so successful, that it has signed up more people than we expected, that we're actually recycling more garden waste than we were before, and that with this £10 discount, we will be offering the cheapest available garden waste service to people on council tax benefit from any authority anywhere in Hampshire. And that is something I think that we should be pleased about. I'm also pleased that we're in a position to freeze off-street parking charges outside the air quality management area. And indeed, what we've said is no increases, and when we do the detailed work, it may be that we even be looking at reductions if necessary, in order to encourage the further parking outside the centre. Obviously, I got a look from the chief executive there, obviously in a financially prudent way that's consistent with our overall budget assumptions. And I would also like to say something maybe about the support for the Hampshire Cultural Trust, but we may need to handle that slightly differently.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. Any further comments? Councillor Lerner.
Yes, thank you. I too share Councillor Todd's sentiments. I think we're actually in a better position than we were a few years ago, despite the turmoil of the past 18 months. Clearly, we do have to recognise that there are significant uncertainties around what central government's going to say in terms of the settlement. As Councillor Cutler mentioned, I think ideally we would like that 3-year settlement to give us the certainty to plan for the future, rather than being left operating on this year-by-year basis. I was slightly surprised by Councillor Godfrey's comments, because I was left wondering whether he'd actually read the latest Conservative literature, which has proposals which would dramatically cut income and increase expenditure without any compensatory cuts elsewhere to make up for that loss. So I am expecting that we'll see in scrutiny coming forward suggestions as to how we can square that circle, so to speak, because of course we will look at any suggestions which come forward of that nature. I too would like to comment on the Hampshire Cultural Trust, but we'll wait until the leader's ready to leave the room.
Okay, right. No further debate on the paper as a whole. So I think if we could move to the recommendations, bar recommendation number 5. Cabinet, are we agreed to the amended recommendations that Councillor Cutler circulated, with the exception of item number 5, as I need to leave the room for that? Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And I now hand over to Councillor Cutler, who he gives me a minute to leave the room.
Okay, members, do we have any, I think we both, Councillor Todd and Councillor Lerner wanted to comment on the Hampshire Cultural Trusts.
Councillor Todd.
Yes. Traditionally, our relationship with the Hampshire Cultural Trust is mainly, or perhaps the name is the clue, through the lens of culture and our museum service. But this initiative that we're looking at here very much is through the lens of high street recovery and helping the city recover from the impact of COVID. And I think it is a very exciting opportunity. It does have a strong cultural dimension. We have some fantastic artifacts here in Winchester that relate to, well, maybe a sort of little bit of background. So Assassin's Creed Valhalla is, this last Christmas, I think, was the top-selling game in the world. The gaming industry is bigger, as I understand it, than the movie industry. It is absolutely, it is certainly one of the largest and fastest growing parts of the entertainment world. And this is one of the biggest games within it. And anybody who's played it, such as I have, because I felt like it's part of doing due diligence, will know that Winchester plays an absolutely central role within it. And King Alfred plays an absolutely central role within it. And importantly, this is a global game. It is something that is being played around the world. And they have just, I think, a day or two ago, introduced a sort of educational version of it, where you don't get to kill anybody, basically. You just ride around learning about Viking life and Anglo-Saxon life. And again, Winchester plays an absolutely central part of it. I was sharing an image of the Winchester Reliquary, which is an exceptional artefact that we have here in the city that actually features very strongly in the game. So this has generated a lot of interest in that particular period of culture. It's something where our city has a lot to contribute. It's something where the Hampshire Cultural Trust and our museums, or the former Winchester Museum Service, now part of the Hampshire Cultural Trust, has a lot to contribute. But also, it has a lot to potentially contribute to our city. Literally around the world, millions of people have been made aware of Winchester and our heritage, and actually having a way for them to, if they're visiting the UK, to put Winchester on the itinerary and come to the city has enormous potential for our visitor economy, for our high streets. And so I think what we're being asked to do here in terms of contribution is a genuinely, it's a really useful thing to be able to do. I applaud the Hampshire Cultural Trust for their leadership and their ambition with this particular activity. I think it enables us as well to test the water as a city, and them in particular, for an Anglo-Saxon experience attraction, which potentially has a very important longer term role within the city. So to me, this is a very good use of public money, and something that I think has real potential to benefit the city in the short and in the long term.
Yes, Bernie.
Thank you. I very much support what Councillor Todd has had to say. Like him, I am a big fan of Assassin's Creed, so this isn't just about young people. There are lots of us for whom it would be an added attraction. I want to talk about this in the lens of through the lens of Central Winchester. I think this is a project which shows that culture and history and young people aren't mutually exclusive, that we have ways of keeping it interesting, making it something that they do want to find out about and do want to experience. We will continue to work with Hampshire Cultural Trust on bringing an Anglo-Saxon cultural attraction to the heart of the Central Winchester development. I think this is very much just a taster for part of how that could work in a very different way to what people would think of as an old Star Museum, although that old Star Museum may well be part of what they want to bring forward ultimately. So I think this is a chance for us to put our toes in the water, bring lots of people to Winchester, show off what a fantastic place we are to visit, and I very much welcome moving forward with this.
Thank you both for your contributions. Councillor Gordon-Smith first.
Yes, I think this is an excellent idea, and it seems to fit into that character of entrepreneurial activity, which we've always been told we're lacking. I think also it's making use of our heritage and of the city brand. And we don't have to build a damn great statue of an angel outside, because people already have a mental image of Winchester and the cathedral and the other buildings. And this is building on it. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you. And Councillor Cleary.
Well, when I first saw 75,000 for this, my first thought was, but this is just a game. I've got to be honest, and I have said that before, but I did look into this Assassin's Creed Valhalla to see what it was all about, and I was quite taken by it, if I'm honest, you know, and I thought, turn it off, I can't look anymore. And I must admit, you're right, Councillor Todd, and as seen as Winchester plays a very essential part in this, I think it will have a very positive impact, and if it helps the supporting the high street recovery, I'm sure if we put this on, people will come and it will be only good for Manchester. So now, having looked at it and thought about it, I do support it. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy, did you wish to add your voice?
Yes, thank you. Not so much for myself, but I know my son's particularly excited by this. I think I'm not really into computer games, apart from Candy Crush. But I think it will bring lots of sort of teenagers and young people who will bring their parents along and sort of say, well, we're in Britain or come down south, we will come visit Winchester. So I think it is a good investment for us.
Thank you everybody for the contributions. Should now put the recommendation 5, that we approve the contribution of £75,000, subject to terms and conditions and funded from the grants reserved to the Hampshire Cultural Trust towards the development of an Anglo-Saxon experience attraction in the city in 2022. In recognition of the positive impact this initiative will have in supporting high street recovery visitor numbers in the city. Are we in favour?
Yes, agree.
Thank you. I can call the leader back.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you very much. We now move to item number 11, which is the Good Shed in Barfield Close, cab 3315. Councillor Lerner, would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to be bringing this paper forward for a mixed office and industrial unit development at the old Good Shed site. I'm also very pleased to say that the intention is to retain and refurbish the existing Good Shed building, which is one of the few buildings left from the old Didcot, Newbury and Southampton railway line, which used to pass through South Winchester and is an important part of the city's industrial heritage. I don't think my husband would have forgiven me if I was proposing to knock it down. The work we've done on employment space needs in the district has illustrated a shortage of quality small industrial units, but unfortunately many landowners of similar sites to this one, which we own, are holding out for redevelopment as housing. While a housing use was assessed for the site, the location is ideal for employment space. It's in an existing industrial area with good public transport links, as well as easy access to the road network. The development will be done to low carbon principles and fits perfectly with the green economic development strategy we've already discussed today, particularly in relation to those 20-minute live work kind of aspects of it. The anticipated return on the scheme will make a positive contribution to the council's budget position, although given the current uncertainty around development costs, that clearly will need to be confirmed by the final business case when we reach that point. So that's it in a nutshell, Leader, and we have officer support to respond to any questions that people might like to ask.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lerner. Any questions? This has obviously been an item that we've talked about for quite some time now. So personally, I'm really pleased to see that we are the paper before us and that we are planning to go ahead with the redevelopment of it. Any questions? Oh, Councillor Todd.
I think probably know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. I think the site is right next to the path through from Barfield Close to the road, and I just wondered if within the scope we're looking and mentions it in passing, but what thoughts there are in terms of how we make that connection through improved or more attractive.
Yeah, there is certainly a significant opportunity to improve that access there. Anybody who's walked or cycled along it, as I have frequently, will know that it's very narrow and also has rather problematic right angles in it. So we will definitely take the opportunity as part of this development to make improvements to that route.
Any further questions? No? Any debate? I think the paper says it all really, but any debate? No? In which case we move to the excuse me, recommendations on page 261 and 262. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, officers, for coming on the call. Clearly not many did this time, but thank you. We've already taken item number 12. So we've got two things that remain. One is to note the forward plan for November. We're happy to note that. Noted. Thank you. And we have an exempt minute from the last cabinet, which we just need to agree. There's nobody in the room. Do we need to go with the door switch on?
Only if anybody wants to make any comments on the exempt minute.
I doubt it. No. Okay. So are we agreed with the exempt minute? Agreed. Thank you very much. And that concludes the agenda for today. Thank you very much for everyone for contributing, for officers to coming along, and for all those listening. We will see you very soon. Okay, bye.